Women over 60. Number 1 ways to respond to older men's hug and stay on his mind forever. Love psychology.
Welcome to Wise Life After 60. So grateful to have you here. In a world full of dating advice about what to text, how to flirt, what to wear, or when to play it cool, we often forget about the quiet moments that speak louder than words. The ones that happen when no one is trying, when energy does all the talking. And that is what I want to talk to you about today. One of those moments that, if you learn how to own it truly, can completely change how a man feels about you, even if you never say a single word. I'm talking about the hug. Now, I know what you might be thinking. A hug? Really? But not just a hug, I mean the way you respond to it. Because the women who stay in a man's mind long after the moment is past, the ones he finds himself thinking about while lying in bed, driving to work, or even in the middle of a conversation with his friends, those women know how to turn the simplest gesture into something unforgettable. You don't need to be overly sexual, and you don't need to act like someone you're not. It's the opposite. It's about subtlety, presence, and feminine warmth. It's about creating emotional gravity in a moment most people rush through. Because when a woman responds to a hug with intention and quiet confidence, with that sense of, "I'm not afraid to let you feel me," that is the moment he remembers. So, if you've ever wondered how to make a deeper impression in love after 60, how to have a man lean in, think of you when you're not around, and crave more of your energy, this is it. Today, I'll show you 5 ways to reply to a hug that will keep him thinking about you. Before we dive deeper, I'd love for you to take a second and tap the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It helps this Wise Life After 60 community grow, and it means we can keep exploring these deeper parts of love together. So let's step into the heart of it now and begin our first reflection.
Way 1. Melt into the hug. Have you ever noticed how some moments are over before you even allow yourself to feel them? A hug can so easily become one of those moments, rushed, polite, something we treat like a handshake. But when you melt into a hug, when you let your body soften instead of holding on to the day's armor, everything shifts. There's something magnetic about stillness. Not the kind of stillness that feels stiff, but the kind that feels surrendered. When you lean into a hug without rushing, it says, without words, "I'm safe here. I don't need to leave yet." And that message has a way of sinking deep into a man's chest, because it tells him that your presence is not an obligation, but a choice. Most people pull away too quickly. They fear the vulnerability that lingers when silence stretches, when closeness has no script. But that is precisely why melting into the hug leaves such a mark. In a world where everyone is in a hurry, you become the rare presence who is not. Your softness becomes unforgettable because it contrasts with the noise and tension of daily life. Think of it like music. The most moving symphonies are not the loud notes, but the pauses that let sound breathe. When you linger in a hug, you create that same pause. It is not passive. It is active surrender, and that surrender has a quiet power because it tells him that you feel held, that you don't need to protect yourself in that moment. Psychology reminds us that safety is one of the deepest human needs. When your body says, "I am safe here," it creates a kind of emotional gravity. He may not be able to name it, but he will feel it, and he will remember it. For men, who are so often taught to be the protectors, this moment flips the script. He doesn't just hold you, he feels held by the peace you bring. I have found that the most meaningful embraces in life are not the ones that last the longest by the clock, but the ones where time seems to dissolve altogether. That happens when two people allow themselves to linger. A few extra seconds can turn a simple hug into a memory that won't let go. And so, when you think about responding to a hug, start here. Melt. Don't perform. Don't hurry. Don't treat it like a formality. Just soften and stay. He will feel it in ways he cannot explain. But of course, presence is not just about stillness. There is another layer, more subtle, more primal, and it comes not from your arms, but from something far more instinctive, your breath.
Way 2. Use your breath. The quiet power of breath is something we rarely think about, yet it shapes every moment of intimacy. Long before words, long before touch, breath was how human beings signaled safety or fear. In a hug, your breathing is not background noise. It is a message, primal and unforgettable. So many people unknowingly hold their breath the moment closeness happens. Their body stiffens, their chest locks, as if intimacy is something to endure rather than sink into. But when you allow your breath to move naturally, when you give a gentle exhale into that space, it's as if you're saying, "I trust this. I feel safe with you." For a man, that message can be more powerful than anything you could whisper in his ear. I once noticed this at a small cafe, where a couple greeted each other after what looked like a long day apart. She stepped into his arms, and at first it was just an ordinary embrace. But then she let out the softest sigh, almost like she was emptying the stress of her day into his chest. In that instant, his entire body shifted. He held her tighter, slower, as if that breath gave him permission to be her anchor. It wasn't dramatic, but it was unforgettable. Breath carries more than oxygen. It carries trust, surrender, and presence. When you breathe freely in a hug, you're not somewhere else in your mind. You're not calculating, performing, or protecting yourself. You're here. And that is what makes him feel not just wanted, but needed in the deepest way. The next time you find yourself in his arms, notice what your body is doing. Are you holding your chest tight, as if waiting for the moment to end? Or are you allowing yourself to soften, to exhale, to let the hug breathe with you? That tiny difference can change everything about how he remembers it. And I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt the weight of someone's exhale in your arms and realized it wasn't just breath, but trust being handed over to you? Did it make you feel closer, more connected? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your reflections might help another woman here see the hidden power of something so simple. Breath is invisible, but its impact lingers. It's the unseen thread that ties you together in silence. And from that silence, there is another way to leave him replaying the moment again and again through the sound of your voice, whispered only for him.
Way 3. Whisper something. There are moments in life when silence feels full, almost heavy with what could be said. And then there are moments when a single word, spoken softly, can cut through that silence, like a flame in the dark. In a hug, the smallest whisper has the power to echo louder than 1,000 conversations. Think about how rare whispers have become in our world. We live in noise, television blaring, phones buzzing, voices competing for space. A whisper, by contrast, feels private, intentional, almost sacred. When you let your voice fall into that quiet register while he's holding you, it becomes more than sound. It becomes sensation, tied to breath, tied to closeness, tied to memory. You don't need to say anything elaborate. It could be as simple as, "Hey you," or "I really needed this." What matters is not the words themselves, but the intimacy they carry. A whisper demands no performance. It's not a speech. It's not a performance. It's simply you inviting him closer without ever stepping back. Men often remember tone far longer than they remember content. The warmth of your breath brushing against his ear, the softness of your voice reserved for him and no one else, creates an imprint that lingers. It disrupts the script of ordinary hugs. Where most people stay silent, you leave behind a sound he cannot shake. Psychologists sometimes say that memory is multisensory. We remember not just what we see, but what we hear, smell, and feel all at once. A whisper during a hug binds your voice to his sense of touch, weaving two senses together into one moment. That is why it's so hard to forget. Long after, he might find himself replaying your words, not for their meaning, but for how they made him feel. To whisper is to choose intimacy over volume. It's to create a little world of two where no one else has access. That sense of exclusivity, of being given a secret, is what stays in his mind. Not shouted, not announced, but given quietly, like a gift only he could receive. The beauty of a whisper is that it doesn't end with the hug. It lingers. It drifts into his thoughts later, like a thread that keeps tugging him back toward you. And once you understand that, you'll see that sometimes the quietest gestures are the loudest of all. But of course, a whisper is not the only language in a hug. Your voice speaks, yes, but so do your hands. And the way you use them can turn an ordinary embrace into a memory that refuses to fade.
Way 4. Use your hands with intention. Hands are storytellers long before words ever arrive. They can tremble with hesitation, they can grip with fear, or they can rest with quiet confidence. In a hug, your hands speak volumes. If they hang passively at your sides, the moment feels forgettable. But when you use them with intention, the embrace transforms into something rich, layered, and deeply felt. So much of human connection is written in small gestures. A hand sliding up his back, a gentle squeeze at his shoulder, fingers softly tracing as if to say, "I feel you here." These are not dramatic moves, but they are full of meaning. They send the message, "I'm not just being held, I'm holding you too." And that difference changes everything. I once watched an older couple dance at a family wedding. Their movements weren't grand or polished, but her hand told the story. The way she rested it on his chest, steady and sure, seemed to anchor him. You could almost see him breathe easier, as if her touch grounded him in that crowded room. It wasn't the dance steps anyone remembered. It was the language of her hand. Psychology reminds us that touch is one of the deepest forms of communication. It bypasses logic and speaks directly to the nervous system. A hand used with care tells him that your closeness is intentional, not accidental. It gives him the feeling that you are present, aware, and emotionally invested. And for men, that level of attunement is rare, which is why it stays on his mind long after. The next time you hug, think of your hands not as bystanders, but as participants. Let them rest with purpose, let them move gently, let them tell him he is not just holding you, he is being received. That subtle shift can turn a simple hug into a memory he replays again and again. And I'd love to hear from you.
Do you notice the difference when someone's hands are intentional, when their touch seems to communicate more than words ever could? Has a small gesture ever stayed with you longer than the moment itself? Share your reflections in the comments, because your story might inspire another woman to discover the quiet power of her own touch. Hands may seem ordinary, but they carry extraordinary weight in intimacy. And when paired with presence, they can anchor two souls in the same rhythm. Yet, even with all this, there is one final choice that can change everything about how a hug is remembered. And it comes not from what you do inside the embrace, but when you decide to leave it.
Way 5. Don't let go first. Most people ruin a hug by leaving too early. They pull away at the exact moment society says it's polite to step back. And in doing so, they cut off the very thing that could have made the moment unforgettable. The truth is, the one who lets go first often signals that's enough closeness. But when you stay just a little longer, when you wait for him to be the one who releases, the effect is quietly electric. Think of how rare it is for someone to linger without rushing. We live in a culture that measures time down to the second, where even intimacy is often scheduled and hurried. When you remain in his arms past that socially acceptable pause, it breaks the pattern. It tells him without words, I am comfortable here. I don't need this to end yet. That message is not neediness, it is confidence, because it shows that closeness doesn't scare you. I once saw this play out at a train platform. A man and woman embraced before parting ways. Dozens of others were hugging too, but theirs stood out. She didn't let go when everyone else did. She stayed. She pressed gently against his chest until he pulled back first. And when he finally did, you could see the question written on his face. Why did that feel different? The moment had become charged, almost magnetic, simply because she allowed it to breathe longer. From a psychological view, this is about creating subtle tension. Not tension as in conflict, but the kind that makes someone replay a moment, wondering why it stayed with them. That extra heartbeat of closeness builds anticipation, curiosity, and an imprint he can't quite shake. Men often crave novelty, and what feels most novel in today's world is not speed, but presence. The beauty of not letting go first is that it doesn't require words, performance, or even movement. It requires only comfort in your own skin. It is a way of saying, I am not afraid of intimacy. I trust this moment. And that quiet confidence is what makes him lean into you in ways he may not even understand himself. So as you think about how to respond to a hug, remember this. Sometimes the most unforgettable part is not how you begin, but how long you allow it to last. In that extra second or two, you may give him a memory that replays in his mind for days. And that brings us full circle. Because every embrace, every breath, every gesture is a chance to leave behind not just touch, but presence.
So much of life after 60 is about rediscovering the power of the small things. We've lived through the big gestures, the fireworks, the highs and lows. What stays with us now are the quiet moments that carry meaning far beyond their size. A hug may look simple to the world, but when met with presence, breath, touch, voice, and the courage to linger, it becomes something unforgettable. What I hope you carry with you is this. Intimacy isn't built in grand declarations. It's woven in seconds of awareness. The way you soften, the way you breathe, the way you whisper, the way your hands rest with intention, the way you stay until the moment ends on its own. These are not tricks. They are invitations, and they remind a man not just of your body, but of your soul. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe so we can keep growing this wise life after 60 family together. Until next time, take care of your spirit.